Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds in action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. Penn State wins in the quarterfinal of the college football playoff in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State beats Boise State by a score of 31-14. They now advance to the Orange Bowl on January 9th in Miami to face the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. This was a dominant rushing performance for Penn State, an extremely good defensive performance for Penn State, limiting Ashton Jeanty, really bottling him up for most of this game. You could look at this game in a lot of different ways, and we're certainly going to get to the elements of Abdul and Dennis-Sutton sustaining injuries in this game. What does that mean for Penn State as the playoff wears on? But especially, it felt like such a dominant first quarter, Justin, and then ultimately penalties were an issue, far more for Boise State, but Penn State just seemed to kind of shoot itself in the foot a little bit. Felt like the score could have been even more bloated than it actually was. The statistics could have been more bloated than they actually were. It felt like Penn State could have been cleaner in this game, but it is survive and advance. What was your overall feeling of this game?
I mean, you said it right. Like, they were playing well. And I'm not going to say nervous, but like the game was a lot closer than I expected it to be, based on not only making plays, but making plays in conjunction with their best player, right? Him fumbling a couple times early, negating his production and capitalizing on a bit and only being up a couple points at halftime. I was a little concerned, but the running game kind of shined through, and I think that's like a personnel mismatch thing. But it came out on top, and I think it was a positive showing, and feeling good moving forward to the next round.
Let's take a look first at Penn State's offense up against Boise State's defense. Drew Aller finishes 13 of 25 for 171 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 52% completion percentage. The running game was the story for Penn State. Katron Allen goes over 1,000 yards rushing for the season. Nick Singleton is also over 1,000 yards rushing for the season. You have 216 total yards rushing for Penn State for the team, and an average of 5.3 yards per carry, a rushing touchdown for Nick Singleton. That 58-yarder there to really seal it at the end was outstanding. Katron Allen was the star of the show, though, man. Like, Katron just looked like he had a different gear tonight. He had this burst about him that Nick did not have for most of the game. What did you see out of Katron and Nick tonight?
Katron just saw some downhill running, got edges, and it was a very disciplined north-south runner. I mean, he was getting creases and, just, again, dominating, in the bowl game. But, I mean, Nick, I wouldn't say he slowed down a little bit. I think he got his opportunities and made the most of them when he did. It was just Katron had the hot hand tonight.
Katron absolutely had the hot hand. He was running angry throughout the game. Penn State had some issues offensively in terms of 10 penalties for 98 yards, and that's just been symptomatic for the entire season, Justin. We've talked about it, and it feels like almost every post-game presser, James Franklin says, we got to clean up the penalties. We've got to clean up the penalties. You can see him being frustrated on the sideline with these things. Good amount of these were on the offensive side, specifically the offensive line, false starts, a couple personal fouls, holding penalties, those sorts of things. I don't know what you do about this deep into the season. Is this kind of the DNA of this team? Unfortunately, not every team is going to be perfect in that category.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a true indictment. I think they have some penalties, but it hasn't necessarily slowed down the show. I mean, the offensive line. Yeah, I guess. I mean, like every position group has some penalties. I don't think they've been detrimental to like the overall team success of where they're at right now, 13-2. So yeah, you can clean up the penalties, but again, I like to lean on aggressiveness of what they're doing. I don't think it's just kind of out of whack and like complete carelessness from a penalty standpoint. Obviously, you got to clean up every week, but it's it's case by case when it comes to that for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as careless by any means by the offensive line. It's, some of it is, it's a big game. Some of those penalties early on in the game from Nolan Rucci, you could feel that anxious energy perhaps. And then a lot of times it's just trying to make a play. It's trying to get just something to break, especially in the interior of the offensive line. And they were getting a lot of things to break there. Specifically with Drew Auer, this was not his best game, but I want to give a lot of credit to this Boise State defense. We talked about this coming into the game, their ability to get after the passer. They're very, very smart about the way that they blitz, even when they bring multiple guys. They did a really nice job on the back end for the most part of this game. And I know Drew Auer was able to get his scores, and those are evident. Tyler Warren and Omari Evans looking really sharp in this game. Hats off to Trey Wallace. This is one of the more important games he's had as a wide receiver for this team. But Drew Auer just never looked comfortable in the pocket. His pocket presence, I think, still needs work. And there's elements of his game that felt really strong in this, and his leadership qualities, his ability to run is still strong. But this was another game where you saw the completion percentage come down to about 50%. And that's kind of like 2023 Drew. And you're lucky it didn't cost you in terms of turnovers, anything like that. But again, you ran the ball so well, you didn't need Drew to be Superman. He had some Superman-like throws in this game. Do you think that's something for later rounds where it's like, hey, Penn State's got to make some changes in terms of pass protection? Is that a deficiency with the offensive line, or just a progression Drew has to make with himself personally?
Yeah, I think it's kudos to Boise State's defensive coordinator off the bat. Just some of the blitzes where they were getting home from and just coming home clean. It is hard to get offensive line on the same accord when it comes to picking up blitzes on the right way, and how they do it. It's not the exact same as the NFL when it comes to that. So if you draw up a nice plan and you get home and, like you said, you can rattle the quarterback. Again, I think that was more kudos to the defensive coordinator than changing anything, since that hasn't been the case all season. If it's like a one outlier type of situation that happens against a quarterfinal opponent that has a bye week to prep for you, I mean, kudos to that defensive coordinator. They came out two to three score victory. But yes, that's something that he definitely have to clean up, and he has to keep his eyes up down the field. And you're completely right, like about the synopsis of keeping his looking a little rattled at times when you're getting hit from a free runner. But that definitely happens. Like if a receiver takes a hard hit over a high ball through the middle of the field, that's the point of those type of blitzes. So I guess what I'm saying is like that's what you expect when you hit the quarterback. But I mean, he managed well, I believe. Still talented, but definitely have to clean up. I guess it comes off. I'm not saying this, but like comes off like a lack of moxie to an extent. You know what I mean? Like it comes off that way. But he's a very talented guy again, and I want to continue to see him rise and play well through the playoffs, which he has been doing.
He has been, and I don't believe Drew has a lack of confidence, and I think that's a really good way to put it, that you're like, yeah, it can look like this, but I feel very confident with him at the controls of this offense, and especially as we get into later rounds. But yeah, again, I like the way that Penn State ran the football again, and this is 3 consecutive games now that Penn State has just run the ball extremely well against Oregon, against SMU at home. You do this under better conditions on the road against a opponent that I know we were talking about this coming into this is that on paper, this is an inferior opponent. You could see the personnel deficiencies, but seeing Boise State up close, the way that they performed against good competition, better competition, ultimately, that's a good football team. That's a team that deserves to be in the college football playoff. And I know it didn't feel like that in the first quarter. It really felt like Penn State was going to run away with this thing. Boise State put up a really nice fight. They've got some good pass rushers, a good defensive line. They're active. They're disciplined for the most part. Penn State's wide receivers, it's going to continue to be an issue this season, and that no matter who you face in a quarterfinal, whether that's Notre Dame or Georgia, and we'll get to that later on here on this show because that's a big deal. The wide receivers of Penn State still struggling to get open downfield is why you're seeing these issues with Drew dropping back to pass and running for his life, trying to run and scramble, trying to extend plays, those sorts of things. So that deficiency we knew coming into the season was going to be a problem. It's still there. So it's all you can really do about it. Before we go any further, I want to talk to all of you about Future Fans Sports. If you've ever tried to help a kid understand football, you know that it's really hard. It's difficult enough talking to a full-grown adult who doesn't know the game and trying to explain the little nuances of the sport, because there are plenty of them. It's a complicated game. Future Fans is a new brand that helps little kids become big sports fans through storybook-led activity boxes that help them understand the sport. You can introduce the core concepts of a sport in ways that make sense to a kid. For example, instead of explaining something like downs in football, which Justin, I know that is it's difficult when you're explaining that to a lay adult, for instance, there's this beanbag toss game that has things like 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it. And then later the storybook connects all of that to football. You've dealt with this. You work with people of all different ages trying to spread the message about the game. This Future Fans product, I think, is a really nice tool for parents, especially.
Any way to engage with your kids, whether it's about becoming a fan, whether you want to work in the sport, whether they want to participate in the sport, learning the context of the game from the rule standpoint and the birth of the different reasons why the game and the rationale behind the different rules really brings in a different level of context for younger kids and for adults, to be completely honest, because you can't learn a wealth of knowledge without the basics. And I think this, Future Fans really provides that great educational foundation for any sports fan, participant, or avid learner.
And you're a dad, and this was invented by dads, and they figured this all out for the rest of us, which is awesome. This product is designed for kids age 4 to 8 and the football fan adult in their life. It's only $49.99 at futurefans.com, and you can get a 15% off discount with the code Penn State, all one word, PENNSTATE. Again, that's 15% off with the code Penn State at futurefans.com, so you can unlock a lifetime of memories around sports this holiday season. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Flipping to Penn State's defense, biggest thing we have to address. Abdul Carter did not play the second half, went down in the second quarter. It looked like, Justin, going into the third quarter, there was maybe an attempt by those on the sideline for Penn State to try and wrap his left shoulder to see if he could go. There was conversation on the broadcast. He was holding his left arm, his left wrist. It looked like that arm was limp at his side. Now, we're recording this before we've heard from James Franklin in his post-game press conference, so hopefully more information is going to come out. Dennis-Sutton also went down there in the fourth quarter, so we're not entirely sure how bad that was. Hopefully that's just something small, but Penn State's top 2 pass rushers getting dinged up here in the quarterfinal, especially Abdul. This defense looked markedly different with Abdul off the field. Still got the job done It's win in advance. It's survive in advance. That's the most important thing. But no Abdul potentially in the semifinal. How concerned could you be?
I mean, losing All-American is definitely a blow to any defense or any team, right? But I think they had some players that stepped up, and I think if they can continue to attack and swarm and play principal defense the way they did today, you can keep games the way they do. But you're going to miss a playmaker in a first-team All-American like Abdul in the top 10 draft pick. So that's goes without saying. But they also have had the firepower in the way that they have been playing to kind of maintain with some of these teams moving forward. Because, I don't think there has been a team outside of Oregon that's just crazy explosive and unbeatable from that standpoint. And with that said, we've seen Oregon a couple weeks ago, and, we had Abdul, but we saw what that looked like.
Mm-hmm. I think Ohio State has the ability to be explosive, but it ebbs and flows. So that's something, again, that's the national title game if you even get to that situation. I think
Correct.
Notre Dame and Georgia present very different problems, but hats off everything I just said about Dani. Dennis-Sutton had himself an outstanding game. Zane Durant was outstanding. Devontae Thomas, Keziah Izzard, Smith Vilbert, and Amin Vanover. Have to give them a lot of credit. Penn State was shuttling them in and out pretty consistently. And then especially once Abdul went down, Amin Vanover played a really good game. And if anything, that made me feel better about, okay, you've got now, 9 days to get ready to go to Miami to face either Georgia or Notre Dame. And if that is a situation where Abdul Carter is, one, physically unable to play, or two, the injury is such that maybe he's thinking about going into the draft in 2025, do Penn State and Abdul Carter decide to be like, hey, you need to shut this down for personal reasons, giving Amin Vanover that runway to be like, you're the dude opposite potentially Dani and Sutton for that semifinal game? It feels a little bit better. I know you would love to have a game wrecker and an All-American like Abdul, but Amin played a really solid game. What did you see from Vanover's game today?
Just like sheer athleticism, right? The length and athleticism, the ability to pursue the football. I mean, those type of guys, when you collect them in droves like they have been doing, and Deion Barnes up front, being able to develop them from a technical standpoint, you can have guys in waiting, and especially guys that can create turnovers. Talk about those 2 forced fumbles. Those are pursuit fumbles, man, and that comes from guys getting to the ball with violence. And I think the defense has been doing that all season. Somewhat under the radar, just from the standpoint, because it's a different style than your attacking type of Manny Diaz that we saw kind of last year from that type of defensive play, and it caused turnovers, again, different type of turnovers, and they've been playing and seem to be bought into Coach Allen's philosophy of style of play, and I mean, it's showing. Going here to the semifinals.
It's more risk analysis, I guess, is the best way to put it. The differences between Diaz and Allen from a play calling standpoint, and that Manny was willing to risk it, and you see more explosive given up, more points given up. Not too many. Obviously, it was an outstanding defense last year. But Tom Allen, it's a little bit safer on the back end, and you're relying on the stamina and the athletic ability of your front 4, your front 7 to be relentless in that pursuit of the quarterback. And I talked about this in our last show, and I know you've been singing the praises of Lockdown U, so I don't need to tell you this. That symbiotic relationship was very evident for Penn State in this game. You don't get to Maddox Madsen the way that you did consistently if it weren't for the security that you had from Penn State's secondary on the back end. There were a lot of coverage plays, a lot of coverage sacks, coverage pressures, coverage tackles for loss. That is a huge testament to what this secondary did in this game. And also, you came up with 3 interceptions against a quarterback who'd only thrown 3 the entire season. Maddox Madsen, as we talked about coming into this, is he the most physically gifted guy? No, but extremely safe and smart with the football. And you made him make mistakes. And that's something that Penn State has repeated this entire season, the ability to come away with turnovers. You talked about the 2 forced fumbles, the 1 takeaway. Zakee Wheatley played out of his freaking mind in this game, man. What did you think about Zakee specifically?
Love to see a player when he has plays like his hair is on fire, right? Like that's exactly how he was, man. Running around, seemed decisive in his decision making and angles that he was taking toward the football, making plays. He's always been a Johnny on the spot type of player. It seemed like today was a lot more intentional, and yeah, like kudos to him. Like a great showing in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, that was outstanding by Zaki. For Penn State defensively, Maddox Madsen finishes 23 of 35, 304 yards, a touchdown pass there. Credit to Boise State. They responded. They didn't go away in this game. I know they were hampered by 13 penalties for 90 yards. Good Lord, that is a brutal number. 8 of 15 on third down. They were put in a lot of tough situations. 2 missed field goals. So that, like, you're just leaving points on the field. Didn't really help you out. 3 interceptions for Maddox Madsen and his wide receivers and tight ends did everything they could, but Penn State was very much willing to be like, we'll let you move a little bit on us, but we're not going to break in terms of the passing game. Where Penn State was outstanding was you limited Ashton Jeanty to 30 carries for 104 yards. Now, for a lot of running backs, that's an outstanding day. No touchdowns, average 3.5 yards per carry. This is a guy who came in averaging 192 yards rushing per game. It's a little cherry on top. You prevented him from getting the single season rushing record. He was 132 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' record. You could tell Boise was attempting to get that towards the end of the game. As someone who just loves the game, part of me would have loved to have seen him get it because the kid is obviously extremely talented. To me, Justin, I don't know if I would say he's a Saquon, but he's damn good. And that was just a situation where it's like, hey, Penn State had better personnel, and there's only so much that a guy like that can do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like when you bring up Saquon and those apex predators at running back, there's levels on levels on levels when you start getting to the weeds of this game because you're 100% right. This kid's a top 25 first round pick in the NFL, runner up for the Heisman, and there's a huge difference between him and like a Saquon from an athleticism standpoint. But I would compare him to like a faster, more athletic Frank Gore, right? Somebody that has a Hall of Fame career, sees the whole, understands the basics and fundamentals of running the football, hard tackle. Something that I noticed at the beginning of the game that I didn't personally like was we were stopping the run, but he wasn't going down plenty of times, right? Like when they were blowing the whistle and he was still standing on his feet, even though it's a win in the scoreboard or the record or the stat books and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. Internally, between like the momentum of the game as a player, like that's a W for him. Like so, I was watching that like, oh wow, like even when things are going well, like he made a stalemate. Let's just say it's a stalemate where you guys didn't take me down. All right, you got me, but you didn't take me down. And so like that kind of showed a little bit of his dynamic, contact ability that he's shown all season. But we outmatched him from a talent standpoint, so that's kind of prevailed through the rest of the game. And yeah, good football player though, very good football player.
Damn good football player. Louis Riddick on the broadcast compared him to Emmitt Smith. That ability to bounce off tackles, stay upright, and keep going. He certainly has that. And James Franklin talked about it throughout the game and the lead up to this game. That he's like, we need a gang tackle and we need to wrap up. And that's exactly what Penn State did in a lot of this game. There were tackles that Jeanty was able to defeat. But when you're met at the line of scrimmage by 3 to 4 blue shirts, it's tough to do anything. So hats off to Jeanty. I think he's an incredible player. Ultimately, he finishes with 33 total touches in terms of 30 carries, 3 catches, 22 yards receiving, 104 yards rushing. So they certainly did their best to try and feed him. As we talked about coming into this game, a deficiency they have in their offensive scheme is that there's just not really that developed game to get him the ball in screen game out in the flats consistently. It's the attempt, the effort is there, but it's not within their scheme. That's not what they want to do necessarily. So Penn State took somebody's strength and they took it away. And they've consistently done that in the games that they've won this year. So that was, again, just an incredibly impressive performance. Very happy with the way that Tom Allen and this defense rebounded from instances where this was a Boise State team that wasn't going away. And we talked about the ways that they shot themselves in the foot and the multitude of turnovers or even, near turnovers that they had. This was an excellent performance from Penn State's defense, and that was the matchup we were looking at. I think the things to take away from this, one, it's survive in advance. So, like, part of me is like, I almost don't care how it looked. You won, you're moving on, you're in the semifinal. Two, who would have thought Penn State would have been in the semifinal of the college football playoff this year? I certainly doubted it. I know a lot of Penn State fans did. This is freaking awesome. This is very cool. Three, any concerns from you about the offensive play calling, especially in the second and third quarter, because it felt like another one of those instances again where Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki, got away from the run, got a little pass happy, got into the gimmicks and the gadgets a little bit, and then once Penn State got back to bread and butter, let's run the damn ball, Penn State looked great.
Yeah, you have brain farts. It seemed like you tried to get a little cute in there, but I mean, it's a big game, playing a different opponent, seeing how they respond to things. It showed that he understood to get back on the script, and he did that. So therefore, it's just you got to try something, see if a counter works. If it doesn't, get out of there. And he did. So
mission accomplished on that side. Point 4, Abdul Carter. What's his status going to be potentially for the semifinal? Dani Dennis-Sutton. What's his status going to be potentially for the semifinal? And also, considering what we saw, those injuries are important, but considering the way that Penn State played and knowing whomever you get, Notre Dame or Georgia, very similar teams. They want to run the football, that play action pass, and play really tough defense, especially taking away the run. And seeing the way Penn State did struggle in the passing game, I think that's reasonable to say in this contest. Does that give you any sort of concern against Notre Dame and Georgia that it just might be? It feels like it could be a rock fight no matter who you play.
yeah, I think that's what we should expect anyway, right? Is that type of dogfight getting later into the season. But I remember we've been saying it all year. Is that's how Penn State's team has been built to, I'm gonna say built to last, or I mean that's kind of their identity they built at the beginning of the season, and we said that is built for sustainability deep into the season. And I think this is what we're going to see, and be able to play against these physical teams in these next rounds, and hopefully the championship and to win it. But these are the things that we have to like capitalize on. You know what I mean? And along with limiting explosives and creating takeaways and explosives on defense. But yeah, for sure.
You've seen the potential in this team since the offseason. You've compared it to the 2005 Penn State football team, which you intimately understand. Are you surprised to see them in the semifinal, or if anything, are you just happy to see this level of success?
I'm happy just to see this level of success, but I'm not necessarily surprised, like just based on what we've said throughout the year. I mean, the expectations might have been a little different coming in, but the players were just a year older and a year better, and just kind of filling some spaces that we had question marks, but I thought we had a chance of being pretty good if people were able to, show up when the red light came on, and they had been doing that, playing lights out, like guys like Kobe King, got Abdul stepping up to be an All-American. Tyler Warren can't speak higher of. Drew Aller's been playing good football, regardless of how we can nitpick him. He's been playing better football. Just the team in general. So, I mean, it's cool to see, and especially in the first college football playoff for them to be in the semifinals.
And especially a top 10 victory for James Franklin, who has been crucified for that for many years. I'm be the first person to say I've pointed it out many times, but still, to record this type of win in the quarterfinal is extremely important. But it's just win, baby. It's go 1-0. It's survive in advance, even if it looks a little bit ugly. This wasn't the cleanest game for Penn State. I think a lot of credit to Boise State. That's a damn good football team. They deserve to be in the 12-team college football playoff. For sure deserving. For sure one of the best teams. Now the question is, Penn State, you got to see what's up with Abdul. You got to see what's up with DDS. And you got to see who comes out of the quarterfinal tomorrow on New Year's Day. And Georgia versus Notre Dame, two very talented football teams. Who is Penn State going to have to deal with in the Orange Bowl in the semifinal in Miami on January 9th? We're going to find that out. Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year, a Penn State victory in the college football playoff. The Nittany Lions are moving on to the semifinal. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.